We're in web session number 10, and this web session is recorded. Thank you, our production team, for getting that recording started. We're going to jump right into our agenda. So as of today, we have 645 folks registered for cohort, a pretty substantial amount of people here to learn about cohort practice with xAPI. Today we have Shelley Blake Block and Jody Liz presenting on the xAPI alphabet soup, TAGxAPI, ICICLE xAPI, Learning Analytics SIG, and Dave. After we have our presentation, we'll get right into some cohort business, and we have quite a bit of it today. We'll talk through our roadmap and recap where we are. We'll have our final team updates. We'll talk about team demo sign up, and thanks for the 2 teams who have already signed up. We'll talk about xAPI parties and the presentations of our teams, and then we have some announcements, important dates, and housekeeping. Again, if you have any questions or anything as we're going through the web session, make sure you're using the chat. Behind the mics today, we have Jessica, that's me. Megan is here with me. Aaron and Jamie are our production team, making sure things run smoothly for us, so thanks to them. Again, today we're at the 10th week of 12 for cohort. So today's final conversation is on the xAPI alphabet soup. We've learned a lot from the industry, the state of the specification. We've learned about what xAPI is. We learned about sending data, receiving data, doing something with data. And next week we're going to see what you've accomplished and done and learned. And we're really excited for those team demos. So we have 2 weeks of team demos. We have 3 slots per week, but we can make more room should more teams be interested in sign up. Later on in today's session, I'll talk through the sign up process. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Shelley and Jody, who's going to give us some presentation on the xAPI alphabet soup.
Hey there, this is Shelley Blake Block. Happy to be with you all today. We're going to be taking a look at things going on in the world of the xAPI specification and its journey towards industry standardization. I'm here with Jody Liss. I'll let her introduce herself as well. Jody?
Hi, thank you very much, Shelley. I appreciate that, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. My name is Jody Liss, and I've been working with Shelley and others on one of these different activities, ICICLE, and I look forward to sharing with you about learning engineering. Thanks, Shelley.
All right, so let's get to it. So TAGxAPI stands for the Technical Advisory Group on xAPI. This is a group that was organized by the Learning Technology Standards Committee at the ICICLE. The ICICLE is the largest association of technical professionals on the planet, and the LTSC, the Learning Technology Standards Committee, is responsible for the production and maintenance of learning technology and learning data standards. What is it that we do? Back in 2018, we published the IEEE's first technical report on xAPI, which is available in the second link on this slide. It's a free report that was created by over 50 technical experts in the field. definitely the sort of thing that you can hand to your IT team or your developers and programmers when you say, hey, I'd like you guys to understand xAPI. The tag itself then helped to launch what is known as the 9274 suite at ICICLE, and I'll put that in the chat. The 9274 suite, 9274, there you go. The 9274 suite is the ICICLE's a group of working groups of technical professionals all working together for the standardization of xAPI. So xAPI itself, as you all know, was developed as a data specification within ADL, and now that specification has been authorized to move forward into the formal standardization process within IEEE. It gets a stamp of approval on it, and then it is an official published IEEE standard. Now, the 9274 suite itself is comprised of various parts. 9274.1 is the base standard. Let me just see if yeah, so on this slide, you see on the bottom, 0.1 is the base standard. So that is just taking the existing xAPI specification and standardizing it. 0.2 is the xAPI profiles. So there is a companion specification to xAPI called xAPI profiles, published by ADL, and IEEE will be taking that specification and putting that through the standardization process. Then there's 0.3. 0.3 is for individual profiles. So there is a SCORM profile, there is the CMI5 profile, there's the video profile, and each individual profile will have its own number under the 0.3 family. And then lastly, there is the 0.4 family. This is for recommended practice reports. The first one is for xAPI implementation. So this shows technical implementers how to properly implement xAPI within an IT stack or within a stack of software applications. And second is for xAPI cybersecurity. So this standard under the 0.4 family will show both technical experts and policy people how xAPI can live securely within a variety of different cybersecurity environments. Different environments have different protocols, whether you're talking about a federal or military environment, a healthcare or K-12 or higher education environment, or a corporate environment in a highly regulated field versus a non-highly regulated field. They all have different security requirements, and this will show you how to implement xAPI properly across those different requirements. So there's a lot of work happening within the LTSC, and I do see in the chat there's a question clear on the difference between specification versus standard. Here's the short story. When ADL develops a data specification, such as xAPI, that's what it is. It is a technical specification. It tells developers how to implement the technology. A standard is when an official standards body, such as the ICICLE, then takes a specification and turns it into a formal standard that is sort of the law stamp of approval for all industry. So what we're doing within the ICICLE currently is we are standardizing xAPI and this family of related features. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Jody, and she's going to talk about ICICLE, which is the ICICLE's industry consortium on learning engineering. One of the most happening groups within the consortia was the group working on xAPI and learning analytics. Jody, it's all you.
Thank you very much, Ellie. It's great so much to be here today. I participated in one of the first cohorts and been a lurker ever since, so it's particularly fun for me to continue to be part of this community. As Shelley had said, ICICLE is also part of the IEEE Learning Technology Standards Committee. So ICICLE is just another branch of the family. And I'm just going to repeat again what Shelley said, this long, complicated name, the IEEE Industry Consortium Industry Connection on Learning Engineering. And so Shelley and several other members of the LTSC were the people who actually made this happen and founded the group. So it's been exciting ever since. So what about learning engineering? Why did they form it, and why should you care? It's actually not about a technology standard or an approach or a specification. It's much broader than that. It's much more holistic. We know all the work that you're doing on xAPI is just awesome. You're asking all these great questions and you're identifying the data to help answer those questions, but then you kind of have to do something with the data. And this is a little bit harder, and this is where learning engineering fits in. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes more about how xAPI fits into learning engineering and why learning engineering is important to you, and give you a little bit more background, of course, on the xAPI that was done part of learning engineering. Just a tiny bit of background. Learning engineering, it's kind of a newer word people are hearing, but it's really not very new. It's been around since 1967. Herb Simon, who was the president of Carnegie Mellon University, won the Nobel Prize in Economics. He said the first step is to find a place on the campus, he was at a university, for a team of individuals who are professionals in the design of learning environments, learning engineers, if you will. So again, professionals in the design of learning environments. That's what you do. That's what I do. That's what all of us does. And that's what learning engineering is about. So as we said, ICICLE was formed under the LTSC. It was formed about 2 years ago. And now it's actually been extended for another 2 years. And it's gotten a great deal of interest. We have currently over 800 people on the mailing list. So we're really excited with the interest that it's been formed over the last couple of years. As you can also see, very tiny, a lot of different organizations that have been working with us and participating and are very interested in the journey of learning engineering. There's over 70 different organizations. So whether you are interested and not part of it or your organization is, please let us know. We'd love for you to be part of it. Who are all of these people? Well, there's software engineers, there are platform developers, there are learning science researchers, there's institutional leaders, there's policymakers, there's instructional designers, there's learning experience designers. It's all of the different people who kind of make up learning. So it's really not necessarily about a particular individual with a particular skill set, although you may have the title of learning engineer, which is great, but it also is about the practice and the process of learning engineering. So people are always like, well, you know, is it about learning? Is it about engineering? Well, it's really about all of that. And so one of the things that we really worked on with ICICLE was trying to come up with some kind of definition, because people kept coming to us and saying, well, what is the definition? What is it all about? And so this is what I have in kind of the middle part of the screen, one way that we've been looking at how learning engineering is. However, it's not the only way, and it can be interpreted and put together however you need. So the first thing is about learning sciences. So it's applying the learning sciences, then using human-centered engineering design methodologies and data-informed decision-making. So just breaking that down again a little bit, the learning sciences, obviously that's where all the data comes in. That's part of where xAPI comes in terms of trying to get the data. You're interpreting the data. The second part about the engineering designing, how do all these different pieces fit together and make things happen? And then, of course, how do you use the data? So you're looking at all different parts of the process, whether it's your competency, going from what's your learner pathway to what's the data that you want from the learner, how are the activities designed, what's the process for learning, how you're using the data analytics. So again, it's this holistic approach of really trying to look at the data and looking at a scale how to improve learning engineering. So that's, again, just kind of one of the ways that we've been looking at engineering. And as more of the activities that we've been doing in ICICLE, we formed 8 different special interest groups for the 2 years. And there was one on curriculum, one on competencies, on design, on data, on privacies. There was also one about professions and how all these different professions are using it. And of course with xAPI. I'll get to that in a minute. And then the other big thing that we did was we put together a conference in May, bringing all these people together to be able to talk about it. And then we're going to have some of the proceedings that will be coming out in December. So let me explain a little bit more about those activities. Jessie Chong was the chair of the xAPI SIG. I'm sure many of you may be familiar with it. She's been involved with xAPI community for many years and has been on the forefront of it. Is quite a leader in it. She also called the SIG actually xAPI and Learning Analytics to get people to think about what you're doing with the data. And as you can see, she was really wanting to see and continue to have the SIG talk about connecting professionals and people and resources and how they all really work together. So as part of the SIG, there was meetings almost every other week for well over a year, for a very long period of time. She would have lots of guest speakers that would come to speak about it in terms of, okay, well, you're getting the data and how is it being used? So she had groups like Digit Games coming about implementing xAPI and learning games and apps. Somebody from the University of Sydney came and spoke about pragmatic data interoperability. Somebody from George Mason University, who I'm sure has been part of this, who is part of this community, Brenda Bannon, she spoke about emergency response and how to use xAPI. And as the title of one presentation was, I got the data, now what? So it was very, very, very active SIG, as Shelley had said, in terms of using xAPI and really thinking about it holistically. And then, of course, we had this conference in May, and one of your fearless leaders from Torrance, who has led the xAPI court, was part of the proceedings, and we were really happy to have him there, along, and Megan was able to come at part 2, so it was just great to have everybody there. And the conference there was three themes, one on competencies, one about what we know about learning, and one about data privacy. And we looked at it from 3 different perspectives, again, along the policy, the standards, and the design. So xAPI obviously runs through all of those themes about competencies. What kind of competencies do you need? What are you trying to do? What do we know about learning? So using the xAPI, and then privacy, which is, of course, really big on all of our minds when we're looking at data. Some of the sessions at the conference on xAPI were learning materials for learning engineers, about blockchain, about an interoperable future learning ecosystem. And Shelley's putting together, along with several others, the proceedings for the conference, and they'll be out next month. So you'll be able to see more about how everything is, all that happened, and to learn more on that. That's a lot of talk about what it is, and I just want to give you 2 examples of how people are using it to give you more context. One is through Carnegie Mellon University, where all of this originated from. There's a Simon Institute, which really looks at learning engineering. And they're working with the researchers and faculty to better understand how people learn so that we can reach more people and help them learn. And they have a whole team-based design and development approach. And I think that's the most important thing when you think about is having a learning engineer to be able to bring together these teams and think about it, and the learning engineering process to be able to put it all together and develop these great courses. So again, you're going to have the learning and learning science people, instructional design, project management, universal design, software development, the domain expertise, and user experience. So the learning engineering is bringing all of these people together, and the learning engineer helps to be able to make that all really happen. Another example is Duolingo. And some of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with this language learning app. And they use learning engineering throughout their whole process. The bit about them is that their metrics include the measures of learning, engagement, but they're also a commercial venture. So that means every decision when they're looking at it is a balance of all these metrics. So they're really looking, how do you create pedagogically sound that are reinforcing the motivators? You're looking at research to improve the learning. You're doing tons of A/B testing to see what happens. So again, it's thinking about how you bring all of those together. And how, as one person said in a post called The Need for Learning Engineering, is that we want to bring about learning and what makes rich, deep, meaningful, and lasting impact. And I think that's the bottom line for all of it. As I said, ICICLE is going to be around for another 2 more years. It's open to everybody. And again, whether you're an engineer, you're a systems thinker, you're working on artificial intelligence, you're working on user experience, you're working on policies, it's inclusive of all of these different things, bringing all the data together. In terms of getting involved, we want to engage with all of these disciplines and align our activities. We want learning engineering to support your goals. We're continuing some of the SIGs, although they are being revamped and seeing how best to communicate. The VIGs, vertical interest groups, trying to think more along the lines of whether it's K through 12, whether it's academics, or whether it's industry. So thinking more along those types of lines. There's several publications and journals that are coming out. For example, a group is coming out with a journal, the Journal of Commuting and Higher Education. They're wanting to do a special journal on learning engineering. There's organizations like AACT, the Association for Educational Communication and Technology, or the e-Learning Guild, that are connecting more with ICICLE in terms of how we can work better together. Boston College recently started a degree in learning engineering. So there's lots of different ways and lots of different activities that are happening throughout all the different sectors about learning engineering. So we really just want to bring it together and have all these different mechanisms, and want you to be part of it. Our next community meeting is in a couple of weeks, and I really would love for you to join it, and let Shelley or I if you have more questions. The name of the journal again is Journal of Computing in Higher Education. It comes out of the education school at the University of Virginia. And so they're thinking about doing it. There hasn't been a call for papers or anything like that yet, but we'll definitely keep this community posted to know about that. So thank you, and I'll have to get back to Shelley to talk about TAFE.
All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure to have worked with a group at ICICLE over the course of the last 2 years, and seen the interest in what started out as maybe kind of a weird idea, but which is really starting to develop into a real profession. And knowledge and competency with xAPI is a big part of it. So happy to share that with you all. There was one remaining question from before. There was a question about how or if ADL and IEEE work together. There are folks from ADL who work directly both as officers within the working groups, as well as members of the working groups. So there is ongoing and sustained communication between ADL on the specification writing side and IEEE on the standards development side. All right, so let's talk about DAVE. DAVE is an acronym for the Data Analytics and Visualization Environment for xAPI. So this is a project that is funded by ADL, and which is essentially a specification and a reference model in the form of a software application for creating a prototyping environment for xAPI data visualization. So one of the issues that we've seen, and part of the reason why we started working on this with ADL around xAPI, is that a lot of people want reporting and visualization out of xAPI. Typically, the kind of stock dashboards that come with LRSs are highly opinionated in that they have to be sort of general to effectively show what is in the LRS, but in being so highly opinionated, either it can be frustrating for people because you can't actually get a specific question answered that you want answered, or a data visualization is so specific that it does not work with your with what you actually are using as your data set. This is a common problem across data visualization throughout all kinds of industries and applications. It's not just xAPI. So what we are doing is we are designing a specification for xAPI analytics, and in the same way that the xAPI specification defines the data model for what an xAPI statement is, the DAVE specification specifies how to create algorithms using the attributes available within xAPI statements in a standardized way. So the project is an open source project. You are welcome to check it out on the link that is on the slide. It is highly technical, but there is a very comprehensive guide to the specification for the learning analytics algorithms, and we are completely open to comments, issues raised, and if people want to work on it. It is an open source project. We have folks around the world, including at University of Memphis at the Institute for Intelligent Systems, working on different aspects of this. So short story, what does DAVE actually do? After all that, what does it do? So DAVE provides an open source and highly standardized way of creating data visualizations that can be directly based on highly granular learning domain-based questions. So if I want to, for instance, take a look at whether there are correlations between frequency of use of a piece of content with outcomes in performance, I can model a data visualization using the algorithm templates within Dave. If, on the other hand, I wanted to visualize learner activity patterns, both in the aggregate and broken down by individual learners, likewise, I can use Dave's algorithm templates to create those resources. Also, and this is one of the unique things about Dave, is that it is very much geared towards interoperability, not just through xAPI as the input, but also all of the data visualization outputs are portable via an open source specification called Vega. And you can actually take the code from the visualization and port that code into any reporting tool that you wanted to. In the future, there will be the facilities so that you could actually create an entire ecosystem of live reporting tools that are all updating automatically from inputs into your LRSs. So that's on the horizon. One last thing before the Q&A. Dave is currently in its second year. We just this month published the most recent algorithms document, which is available on GitHub, and we will be presenting some new capabilities this December, just coming up, a couple weeks, at the annual ICICLE conference in Orlando. So that's it for us. Happy to answer any questions. All right, I'll get to some questions that I see in the cohort chat. So, is there a source data set for reference testing? There is a source data set for reference testing, but also you can already hook Dave up to any LRS, so you can use your own xAPI data and do the reference testing that way. Currently, all of the testing is done in memory on the browser. In a future iteration, there will be a backend to support persistent and saved tests. Did he say beta? Yeah, Dave is currently in alpha form. We are scheduled to issue the beta version in March of 2020. Other resources for learning how to use Dave, everything's on GitHub. Like I said, Dave currently is is meant for a highly technical audience, in that it presents you with templates for building algorithms that fit the Dave specification. From those algorithms, you can then develop data visualizations. Now, we do have a demo that is also accessible via GitHub, where you can show what these things will look like as Dave starts to get built out. That's where the pictures came from the previous slide. These are all taken from the existing demo environment. You can go into the demo environment and play with it. Still early days. Okay, so how long do us not so technical folks have to wait? I would say that in the same way that xAPI itself as a data specification was built by technical folks and then has been implemented within software products for use by business end users. Likewise, you will see the same pattern of adoption with all of the various assets being created, including Dave. Open source spec, so Dave takes all of its input via xAPI, and the data visualization output is via Vega. You can also use Vega Lite. They're two different but related visualization grammars. I'll put it in the chat. Visualization grammars help in an interoperable way to define what it is that the data visualization is doing with the data. So again, what we're trying to do is provide a highly standardized and structured approach to analytics that can be used with xAPI. We do not expect it to be the only way to do analytics with xAPI by any stretch of the imagination, but for the purposes of speed, efficiency, and persistence, especially within the DoD environments that ADL is concerned with, it is highly desirable to have standardized, structured algorithm templates. Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Jody and Shelley. I'm going to switch back over to my presentation, and we're going to get started on some cohort business. Thank you for those updates. So we have some updates on where your team should be. We'll talk about the roadmap. Right now we're in week 10, so you're doing application, next step, what's in it for me, what are you learning, being able to demonstrate what you're learning. Our next week on, can everyone hear me okay? I'm just checking. Can you give me a thumbs up? Okay, perfect. Thanks, Luke and Amy. Next week starts our first round of demos on Adobe Connect. So you can present online, and we are going to be asking you to sign up. So remember that you all should submit your weekly updates by 5 p.m. on Wednesdays. I'm going to go through and show the final round of updates this week. It's never too late to join a team. So if you hear something interesting while we're going through the updates, go ahead and review the team Slack channel. Join one or two of them if they seem interesting, and then just start speaking up. Or lurk, whatever you're interested in. So I'm gonna switch over to the GitHub page so that we can start getting updated. So our first team up this week is Team Agent. If anyone from Team Agent is on the line to give their update, Tracy. Team Alexa. Is anyone on the line to give your update? Team Alexa, Brian? All right, so Alexa's skill is mostly built out. It's not perfect, but it's working.
Hi, this is Izzy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thanks. So I'm just filling in for Brian this week. So we got our flow working in VoiceFlow. We still have to test a lot of it, but Brian was able to collapse many of our much of the flow together so that it makes more sense, and it's much more simplified, easier to read and follow. We have to still put in our xAPI statements and test all of those, but we're making great progress, and we're really happy with where we are right now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Team Beginners. Is anyone on the line to give an update for Team Beginners? Trisha or anyone? Team TAGxAPI Library. Is anyone on the line to give an update there? Brian or anyone? Team Checklist. Chris, are you on the line to give an update? All right. Team Dragonstats. J-Rock, did you want to give your update?
Happy to. So I was the lone stranger yesterday. My awesome, illustrious teammates were not able to jump onto the call. So I can only really speak to the part that I've been working on. I'm not sure the progress that they've made. So you'll remember when we started, my first idea was to have like a physical thing that could keep track of the gameplay of a game of Dungeons and Dragons. I was picturing, a smart board with hall monitor sensors that could magnetically determine who was where and whether you're moving towards the enemy or away, that kind of thing. And so as we've been kind of processing and iterating it, it's turned more into a let's just let people play the game they're going to play. Let's have a tool that can keep track of the choices that they make. So I come up with an adventure. I'm not completely done with it. It's pretty sweet. It's got a mad druid and the forces of nature coming against the players. But the tool that I'm building right now, for the reviewer, they're going to log in with their own name and email address, and then also name the player and their email address that they are observing. And it's going to have questions kind of like what you see on your screen there as far as gameplay. On X's turn, they tend to charge the foe, move towards an advantageous shooting position, stay near the group, keep their distance. And each of those would be an optimal choice depending on what class they're playing. So the idea, if they're playing a tank character, A would be the best choice there because you want that person out in front being a big threat to the bad guys and kind of taking all the attacks, so maybe the weaker guys can fight from a distance. Other questions about like table manners. On X's turn, are they ready? Are they looking up rules and everyone has to wait for them? Are they on their phone? Are they doing something else? So, our basic two questions are, if I was brand new, I'd never played the game before, and I got invited to go play with people that have been playing together for a while, what are the things I'd want to be good at? What are the things I'd want to learn? So we got a game. I'm building this tool so that we can capture how well they're performing, both, just being a fun person to play with, as well as strategically how well are they playing the type of class they are. And then the idea being that can help us recommend which module of the intervention they may need to focus on first to become a next level player, that kind of thing. I know we bit off a huge amount taking something that's completely in people's minds and trying to capture it digitally, but this is where it's taken us so far.
Awesome. Thank you for that update, J-Rock. Joanne is on the line, but she asked me to give the updates for this week because she is actually testing her prototype with babies today. So she created additional pages for consuming food and engaging in activities for the app, and they're going to clean up some of the files to get ready for presentation, and they're one of the first teams to sign up to present their demo next week. So awesome. Thanks, Joanne. And I believe that is all of the teams who are on the line today, but we'll go through quickly to just check and see if anybody wants to give an update. Team HTML5, interactive video, LlamaSoft, Microsoft Teams, online lab, Pebble, Query LRS, Scavenger Hunt, Unity 3D Sandbox.
Hey, this is Eric here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you, Eric.
Great. There should be an update. I'm not sure if it refreshed on the page for you or not. Let's see if it shows up. Interesting. Well, I'll just read what I submitted here. So we did, the team met, which that would be Jay, Leone, and myself. We did meet this week and demonstrated where we left off with the fundamental challenge in getting around in a Unity 3D scene is how do you navigate easily. And so we took that challenge and we were able to both get something working, a couple different approaches, but along the same lines. Jay built, and we'll demonstrate it, I think next week, if there's time, we can demonstrate where we're at, hopefully take it a little further. What Jay built was using a built-in tool in Unity called Pro Builder. It allows you to build 3D models right in the program without having to learn a whole new complex 3D modeling app. So I think that's making 3D building accessible to us. So he built a really nice kind of playing field with paths on it, and he did something really nice with it's called a nav mesh. It allows wherever you click, it allows the camera to kind of follow along with the geometry. So we're basically solving the problem of navigating through one of these 3D scenes through that way. And that means that when we start building interactive experiences that generate xAPI statements, you'll actually be able to get to them and use them and be a little bit of free form. Now, I took the same concept. Mine is a little different, though. I'm not using the Pro Builder. I'm building waypoints that are just like dropping breadcrumbs or 3D objects in the scene that you can click on, and the camera automatically flies to that spot. So I'll be able to demonstrate that. I got it working last night. That's why I'm so tired today. But in reality, yeah, so we both have navigation working, and our goal for the rest of the week is now to kind of build off of that with, once you get to one of these spots in the 3D scene, what are you going to do? Something simple like drag and drop, something complex like place one object on another object. So we'll see how far we can go with some simple interactions that generate statements. We've already tested and shown that we can generate statements, but that's why we went all the way back to the drawing board and wanted to make sure we can now navigate through the scene to get to those things. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully next week we can demonstrate, maybe we want to try to combine our efforts to see if there's a way that a player could use freeform walking around on the nav mesh or clicking on preset points of view. If we can demonstrate that, we'll have a good demo next week. Do we have about 15 minutes next week? Otherwise, yeah, just let us know what we can do. And thank you.
Yes, you have about 12 to 15 minutes to present, and then a little bit of time for Q&A. But I'll go through the timing logistics a little bit after we finish the update.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, thanks. That's our update. Looking forward to next week.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. And then final two really quickly, Team Vimeo, xAPI, WordPress Learn and Dash. Alrighty, I'm going to go back into my presentation. Alrighty, so we're going to talk through a little bit of the logistics for team demonstrations, how to sign up, what the time is going to look like, and how many slots are available. But first, A reminder that there's some free stuff while you're playing around. I wanted to give you the links and things again and showcase them. This is also in the resources channel on Slack, so you can use some of these resources that are free to our cohort members while you're doing your iteration. So project team demos. We have 2 weeks of project team demos, one on November 14th, one on November 21st. We have 3 slots, 3 20-minute slots, so 6 teams total, but we'll make more time if more teams want to sign up. If your team is interested in signing up for those slots, please send a direct message to me, Jessica Jackson, in our cohort Slack, or you can shoot me an email to reserve your spot. Right now, we just had Unity 3D sign up for next week, so there's one more open presentation for November 14th. We still have 2 open presentation slots for November 21st. We'll make more if there's demand, so don't worry. This is online in Adobe Connect during our regular weekly 2 p.m. session. They're 20-minute presentations per team, so they're presenting for about 12 to 15 minutes, plus some times for questions. If your team is presenting, this presentation generally includes some slides to walk us through. Your presenter can also share their screen and do a live demo of functionality if you wish. I want to remind you that your project doesn't have to be perfect or completely finished to present what you've been working on. This is a chance for you to share what your team has accomplished thus far, show your work, and share what you're learning. If you have any questions about project team demos, feel free to reach out to me in Slack, Jessica Jackson, or an email, and my email is going to be in the final slide today. We also have our xAPI party coming up on Friday, December 13th, here in Chelsea, Michigan, and online. We have 2 ways that you can participate in the party. We want you to know that we are going to be having a call for proposals. This is not to be intimidating, but this is just how we're going to collect the stuff for the presentation. We need to capture your info. So don't be alarmed when we send a call for proposals. All cohort teams have a chance or a time slot to speak. So if you want to present during the party, you have a time slot. In person, there are multiple tracks and 5 time slots per track. There's also going to be an xAPI makerspace, and we have the online track with 5 time slots. For the party, the presentations are about 45 minutes per presentation, and then there's some time for Q&A. If your team is interested in presenting at the party, we'll ask you to submit your presentations beforehand with the call for proposals. We need to know if you're planning on presenting, so just send me, Jessica Jackson, a message in Slack to confirm your participation. If it is needed, we can share additional information with your employer about this event, given the name of the party. So if they need something to validate that this is a conference and learning space, we can absolutely share you that information. Just send us a message. Again, let me know if you have any questions about that. I know that there's been some conversations about a meetup on Thursday night. We're going to be using the Meetup Michigan Slack channel to talk about the potential for a happy hour meetup on Thursday. And also, I sent out some accommodations if you're traveling into Chelsea. I sent out some accommodations information, but I'll also include that in our weekly email. All right, some good stuff to know, and then we're going to wrap up a little early today. Next week, we start team demos. That's so exciting. I can't wait to see your work out loud. It's still not too late to sign up for cohort. In fact, now is a really cool time because they'll be able to see, any new members will be able to see the work that's been accomplished and kind of lean in and help support. We have our party on December 13th. It's both in Michigan and online, and you can sign up at torrancelearning.com/xAPI party. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me, Jessica Jackson, at jjackson@torrancelearning.com, or you can message Jessica Jackson in Slack. That's all we have for today. Have an awesome Thursday. There's still one more spot for next week's team demo. So if your team is interested in presenting, please let me know. Have a great Thursday.